It's strange how you can give everything to the people you love and still feel invisible. From the outside, no one would guess that Theo Alvarez was the backbone of his family. At 28, he lived in a cramped studio on the edge of Philadelphia, working late nights as a data analyst, quietly sending money home every month. His family barely called unless they needed something. The only time his phone lit up with a message from his father was to ask for help with the mortgage, a doctor's bill, or more often, his younger brother Luis's latest disaster. Theo had learned long ago that being gay in a conservative, traditional family meant one thing: stay quiet, stay useful, and maybe you'll be accepted. "We don't talk about those things here," his mother said, when he first tried to come out at 16, voice tight as a locked door. Ever since, Theo kept his truth tucked away, out of sight, just another sacrifice on a long list. But on a rainy Thursday, something inside Theo broke. The call came just after midnight, his father's voice sharp, not with worry, but with accusation. "How could you leave us like this? We're family. Luis is struggling again, and you're the only one with a real job." Theo stared at the rain outside, the city lights blurring into one. He had just transferred his last $700 meant for his own rent, because Luis had crashed Dad's car and needed help. Just this once. He looked around his apartment, the peeling paint, the secondhand furniture, the list of dreams he'd shelved to keep the family afloat. Was this really all his life would ever be? An endless cycle of giving until there was nothing left? And for what? A seat at a table where he could never truly be himself? That night, Theo made a silent promise. No more. He would not be the family's silent ATM, their invisible support. He would fight for his own future, even if it meant being seen as selfish, even if it meant stepping out alone. But breaking free from family isn't simple, especially when you have been taught that love is measured by how much you can give up. And when your identity is the very thing they wish you'd hide, the price of self-respect can feel impossibly high. Would you have the courage to walk away from everything you have ever known, just to finally live as yourself? If you've ever felt like Theo or had to choose between family expectations and your own happiness, let us know in the comments. Subscribe for the next part of Theo's journey. His fight for freedom is just beginning. Theo didn't come out to his family because deep down he already knew what they'd say. It wasn't fear of rejection. He had already been rejected in quieter, crueler ways. They just never said the words out loud. At family dinners, when his uncle asked if he had a girlfriend yet, and his mom jumped in too quickly, laughing it off with, "He's too focused on work," Theo smiled, quietly, practiced. When his younger brother Luis got drunk at Thanksgiving and shouted, "Don't worry, at least I'm the normal one," no one corrected him. His mom just told Theo not to take it personally. He didn't mean it. You know how he is. What he knew was that even though he had never said the words "I'm gay," his family had built a silent agreement around it. If he kept that part of himself hidden, they'd keep him close as long as he stayed useful. Theo paid his parents' electricity bills 3 months in a row. He covered Luis's DUI fines twice. He sent money for car repairs, school supplies for his nieces, and once even $500 for a new couch. Because your mother's back can't take the old one anymore. He never questioned it, at least not out loud. It was just who he was, the good son, the responsible one, the one who had a pool and no children and no real obligations. And in return, he got empty thank yous, demands disguised as guilt trips, and a family who didn't ask about his life, only what he could give. Not once did anyone ask who he loved. Not once did they ask if he was happy. One Sunday afternoon, as he walked past a park near his apartment, he saw 2 men, mid-30s, maybe sitting on a bench, sharing coffee and laughter. One leaned his head on the other's shoulder like it was the most natural thing in the world. And Theo froze. He stood there, holding a grocery bag, watching them from across the street, and something inside him cracked wide open. Not from jealousy, from recognition. He wanted that. He wanted to love and be loved like that openly, without apology, without pretending. But he couldn't even imagine bringing someone home. Not to his family. Not when the only thing keeping him part of the family was the fact that he never made them look too closely. That night, his dad called again. "Luis is looking at another program. Rehab this time. Not cheap, but it might finally stick. Think you can help us out?" Theo didn't answer right away. He just looked at the reflection of himself in the microwave door, tired eyes, worn down expression, and said, "I can't." His father went quiet. Then the voice changed. "After everything we've done for you." Theo bit down hard on his lip, the words searing through his skull. "After everything we've done for you," as if love was a transaction, as if keeping him in the family group chat was a favor. "You'll let your own brother rot," his father added. Theo didn't answer, just ended the call. The silence afterward felt lighter. For the next week, he didn't respond to the texts. He didn't send the money. He didn't explain. And nobody called to ask how he was doing. But then the emails came. One from his mother, titled simply, "Your father is stressed." It wasn't a request. It wasn't even about Theo. It was a subtle dig. "Luis has been trying so hard. He looks up to you, you know. If he fails, I don't know how we'll recover." Then another one, this time from Luis. "Bro, just send it. What's the big deal? You live alone. It's not like you're feeding a family." Theo deleted the messages without replying. He had never said "I'm gay" to any of them. But in that silence, in his refusal to be drained dry anymore, it felt like the loudest coming out he'd ever made. And yet, that was just the beginning. Because breaking free wasn't just about ignoring the calls. It was about rebuilding his sense of worth from the ground up. It was about unlearning the belief that his love had to be earned through sacrifice. And he didn't even know where to start. The hardest part wasn't saying no to his family. The hardest part was sitting in the silence that followed and realizing he had no idea who he was without them. Theo had always lived in reaction to their needs. His life ran on alarms, text messages, guilt trips, phone calls with just one more thing. He was a machine built for emergencies, not peace. So when the silence came, he didn't know how to live inside it. He started coming home from work with no one waiting on the other end. No calls, no demands, just a quiet apartment filled with air he hadn't owned in years. He found himself staring at his own reflection more often. Not in vanity, but in unfamiliarity. Who was this man? 34, financially stable, no partner, no kids, closeted, haunted by the word disappointment, even though he had built a life any parent should be proud of. And for the first time, he asked himself a question that felt like breaking glass. What if I stopped waiting for their love to mean I could live mine? He didn't have an answer, but something inside him stirred. He started small. One Saturday, instead of sending groceries to his parents, he bought a ticket to a spoken word event hosted by an LGBTQ+ community center he'd walked past a dozen times but never dared enter. The flyer in the window read, "We speak, we exist." He stood at the back of the room, hands in his coat pockets, heart racing. The space was dim, cozy, unapologetically queer. Flags on the wall, mismatched chairs. A woman with half her head shaved read a poem about telling her grandmother she was trans. A man in his 50s talked about losing his partner and learning how to laugh again. People snapped their fingers, cried, hugged. No one looked at Theo, and yet he had never felt so seen. On the way out, someone tapped his shoulder. A volunteer, maybe in his late 20s, brown skin, big smile. "Hey, first time here?" Theo nodded. "Yeah, just wanted to..." "Listen." The guy smiled wider. "That's how most of us started." He handed Theo a small card. "There's a community brunch next Sunday. No pressure, just food and people who get it." Theo didn't promise he'd come, but he didn't throw the card away either. That night, he did something he hadn't done in years. He opened a journal. The first page, he wrote, "I think I might want to stop hiding. Not just from others, but from himself." That week, he went to brunch. He sat at a table with two lesbian moms and their toddler, a retired drag queen who told the wildest stories, and the same guy who'd given him the card, who introduced himself as Marcus. They talked about nothing and everything. Books, recipes, first loves, therapy, pride parades, the power of chosen family. Theo didn't say he was gay. He didn't have to. Marcus walked him to the subway afterward. "You okay?" He asked. Theo nodded. "Yeah, it's been a long time since I let myself be in spaces like this." Marcus looked at him and said something Theo would carry in his chest like a spark. "Maybe it's time to stop letting yourself be a stranger in your own life." That night, Theo cried for hours, not out of sadness, out of relief, out of grief for the version of him that never got to be. He didn't call his parents. He didn't text Luis, but he started texting Marcus, started going to queer yoga, started reading queer memoirs, started noticing how many little ways he had dulled his light to be tolerated. He started letting himself want, and with that came the most terrifying realization. If he came out, if he stopped playing the role they gave him, the good son, the quiet one, the provider, there was a real chance he'd lose them completely. But if he didn't, he'd keep losing himself. One night, while reorganizing his bookshelf, Theo found an old photo album his mom had sent him 3 birthdays ago. He flipped through it. Family holidays, school awards, his high school graduation. A photo of him and Luis, shoulder to shoulder, grinning. And then he saw the note tucked into the back. A birthday card from his mom. "We're so proud of the man you've become. Don't forget where you come from." He stared at those words and whispered back, "You don't even know who I am." But he did now, and soon they would too. It started with a post, a simple photo on Theo's private Instagram. Him and Marcus sitting on a bench, sunlight casting soft gold across their faces. The caption read, "First time in years I didn't have to explain my smile." It wasn't loud, it wasn't public. But for Theo, it was a declaration more honest than any conversation he had ever had with his family. The comments from friends rolled in, kind affirming, loving. He didn't respond to any of them. Just reread them every night before sleeping, like tiny bandages on old wounds. He never made a grand announcement. His coming out unfolded quietly. He stopped dodging questions, stopped lying about who he was in his stories. At work, he spoke of Marcus without switching pronouns. At home, he changed his phone wallpaper from a family photo to a sunset from the hike he and Marcus took together. He no longer rushed to answer calls from Brandon. He didn't jump every time his mom messaged emergency, but it wasn't just what he did, it was what he stopped doing. He stopped explaining, stopped over-apologizing, stopped erasing parts of himself to make others more comfortable. That's what scared his family the most. Not that he changed, but that he stopped needing them to accept the version of him they had built in their heads. The silence came first, the kind that isn't quiet but loaded. Then came the message from his mother, "Heard about you, I'm disappointed." Just that, 6 words like bricks, but instead of crumbling, Theo stood taller. He didn't reply. Instead, he opened his journal and wrote a letter he would never send. "I'm not sorry for being gay. I'm sorry you never got to know the best version of your son, but I won't keep shrinking to fit a mold that never saw me." That same week, he performed at a local open mic, a spoken word piece he had written at 2 a.m. After deleting yet another message from Brandon, asking for just a few hundred for something urgent. Theo's voice trembled at first, but with each line it grew steadier. He spoke of being the invisible provider, the emotional sponge, the son who made everything work until he didn't. And only then did people notice. The room held its breath. When he finished, the silence broke into applause. One woman, eyes glossy, touched his shoulder and said, "My daughter's queer. I wish I had heard this years ago, thank you." That night, Theo walked home under city lights, not alone but free. His phone buzzed again. Another message from his mother, this one longer. "I just want my son back." He read it, then replied calmly, "You never lost him, you just never tried to know him." 3 months after Theo stopped replying to Brandon's guilt-trapped texts and his mother's cold attempts at control, something unexpected arrived at his apartment. A small envelope, addressed in tight, careful handwriting. No return address, no name, just 2 words in the corner, "From someone who heard you." Inside was a simple card with one line, "You said what I've been too scared to say." Folded inside was a flyer, a queer writers' workshop held every Sunday at the old community center downtown. It wasn't signed, but it didn't need to be. Theo stared at it for a long time, feeling something he hadn't felt in years, a pull toward a place he didn't have to explain himself. That Sunday, Theo went. The chairs were mismatched. The coffee tasted burnt, but the stories, raw, jagged, brave, made something inside him settle. He wasn't the only one who had been the responsible one, the one everyone leaned on but no one saw. He wasn't the only queer child who had been told to tone it down, quiet it out, hide it all for the family's sake. For the first time, he didn't feel like an outsider holding his breath. He began writing again, not just for performance, but for healing. Stories poured out of him, about boyhood, about duty, about the unbearable weight of being a good son in a house that only praised silence. And the more he wrote, the less he felt like that weight belonged to him. Marcus came to every reading, always in the back, quiet, but eyes locked on Theo like his words mattered. One night, after a particularly heavy piece about being gaslit by love disguised as obligation, Marcus held Theo's face and said, "You don't owe anyone a version of yourself they refused to see when it was offered for free." A month later, Theo got a call. His parents' house had been repossessed. Brandon was couch surfing. His mom had tried to reach him in desperation through a message sent to his old college email. Theo sat with that news, not with guilt, but with peace. He had already paid more than his share, emotionally, financially, spiritually. He didn't owe another dollar or another breakdown. Instead, he stood up and called his found family. The friends who knew all his favorite verses, the people from workshop who mailed him postcards with poetry, Marcus who brought him tea on the nights his chest still ached from old memories. They gathered that night, mismatched chairs, candles flickering. Someone brought wine, someone else brought tamales, and they read to each other. One friend handed Theo a small gift box. Inside was a key to the new co-op art space they had opened together. On the tag, "You deserve doors that open." Theo cried, not out of sadness, but because for the first time the word home didn't feel like a memory he had to leave behind. He had built it, not with the people who shared his blood, but with those who saw his full self and stayed anyway. Have you ever had to let go of the family you were born into to find the one that sees you? If Theo's story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real stories about identity, resilience, and the power of choosing yourself. Your story matters, and we're here to tell it.